The story you're about to hear isn't about football. It isn't about trophies, fame, or the spotlight. It's about something far simpler and far deeper. A watch. To some, it looked ordinary. A scratched steel strap, its face dulled with age. Something you might expect on a man rushing to work. Not on one of the wealthiest athletes alive, but for Cristiano Ronaldo. It was everything. This story begins in Madrid. The airport buzzed with its usual symphony. Rolling suitcases rattling over tiles, children laughing, the distant echo of departure announcements. Businessmen hurried past with phones pressed to their ears while families clustered together, passports in hand. In the middle of it all walked a man who didn't need to hurry. A man who, despite being one of the most recognized faces on the planet, moved quietly, deliberately, almost unnoticed. Cristiano Ronaldo. No flashing cameras followed him this time. No entourage cleared his path. Just him, a small leather carry-on, and that watch, glinting faintly beneath the fluorescent airport lights. As he moved toward the first-class gate, a few people did double takes. Was it really him? Ronaldo, dressed so simply. Jeans, a plain polo, trainers, a far cry from the image on magazine covers and billboards. But that wasn't the surprise. The real surprise, and the thing that would soon spark a conflict and make headlines across the world, was sitting quietly on his wrist. That watch. And before this flight would land, that single detail would trigger a chain of events no one in first class would ever forget. The boarding gate slid open with a soft chime, and Ronaldo stepped inside. No fanfare, no photographers, no one rushing to greet him, just the quiet rhythm of his footsteps against the polished floor. The flight to New York was long, and in first class, comfort was crafted like a kingdom. Plush leather seats curved into private suites. Champagne flutes glistened on folded napkins. The air carried that faint blend of luxury, polished wood, fresh linen, and just a trace of expensive perfume. Passengers were already settling in. To the left sat a businessman in his 50s, sharp suit pressed to perfection, laptop open before takeoff. His expression was one of constant calculation, as if every glance, every nod had a price tag attached. Status for him was a weapon. 2 seats down, a young boy clutched his father's arm. The boy's eyes darted across the cabin with wide wonder. His father, tired, modest, clearly not used to this level of travel, offered soft reassurances. "Look, son, this is first class. Enjoy it. We don't get this often." Across the aisle, an elderly woman with silver hair arranged a rosary in her lap. Her eyes were kind, her posture humble. She noticed people, not possessions. Her smile reached everyone. The businessman, the boy, even the attendants bustling about. And then there was Marissa, the lead flight attendant for this journey. Tall, composed, her uniform perfectly tailored, every strand of her hair pinned into place, every gesture precise. Marissa lived for order, and more than that, for appearances. In her mind, first class wasn't just a cabin. It was a stage. And passengers, no matter who they were, had to perform their role. She noticed Ronaldo immediately. Not because of his fame, she'd served celebrities before, but because he didn't look like one. His outfit was casual. His luggage was small. His presence oddly unassuming. And then her eyes caught it. The watch, not gold, not diamond-studded, not what she expected from a man whose Instagram posts often showed glittering timepieces worth millions. This one looked plain, worn, a relic compared to the Rolexes and Patek Philippes she had seen on lesser men. Her brows furrowed for the briefest second, then smoothed into a smile. But inside, a thought flickered. That doesn't belong in first class. As Ronaldo placed his carry-on neatly in the overhead compartment and lowered himself into the leather seat, he leaned back with quiet ease. His wrist rested on the armrest, the watch face glinting under the cabin lights. And though not a word had been spoken yet, Marissa's eyes lingered longer than they should have. The seed of conflict had been planted. The cabin doors sealed with a muted thud, and the hum of the engines began to rise beneath the floor. Passengers adjusted their seats, buckled belts, and settled into their private bubbles. But Marissa's eyes were still drawn, again and again, to the same detail. That watch. She approached Ronaldo with the kind of smile flight attendants train for. Courteous, polite but edged with something else. "Good evening, Mr. Ronaldo," she said smoothly, her voice carrying just enough volume for nearby passengers to hear. "I trust you're comfortable?" Ronaldo looked up, calm. "Very, thank you." Her eyes flickered to his wrist almost involuntarily. "I couldn't help but notice," she began delicately. "Your watch. It's rather unusual for first class." Ronaldo tilted his head slightly, amusement in his eyes. "Unusual?" "Yes," Marissa replied, still smiling, though her tone hardened. "Many of our premium passengers prefer to keep a certain standard of appearance. You know, something that reflects the environment here." The businessman in the sharp suit looked up from his laptop, his gaze sliding to Ronaldo's wrist. His lips curled faintly as if silently agreeing. 2 rows back, the boy's eyes widened. He whispered to his father, "Dad, that's Cristiano Ronaldo." His father nodded quickly, urging him to keep his voice down. But both were now watching closely. The elderly woman across the aisle shifted, her fingers tightening around her rosary. She saw the exchange for what it was, a test of pride. Ronaldo leaned back, his voice calm, almost gentle. "This watch is more than an accessory. It's not meant to impress anyone here. It's meant to remind me." Marissa tilted her head, feigning curiosity but dripping with judgment. "Remind you of what exactly?" Ronaldo raised his wrist slightly, letting the scratched steel catch the dim cabin light. His words came measured, slow, steady. "Of when I had nothing. When I was a boy in Madeira, dreaming of a future I couldn't even picture. When this watch was one of the only things I owned. It was with me the day I signed my first contract. The day I told my mother I'd build her a home. Every scratch on it has a story. A struggle. A victory." A hush fell over the nearby seats. The businessman's expression faltered. Just for a second. The boy leaned further into the aisle, eyes glowing. The elderly woman whispered softly under her breath, almost like a prayer. But Marissa's smile stiffened. "I understand, Mr. Ronaldo, but in first class appearances matter, and some passengers may find such an item out of place." Her words carried farther this time. Heads turned. A young woman discreetly angled her phone, recording under the guise of checking messages. Another passenger nudged his companion, whispering, "Is she really saying that to Ronaldo?" The air thickened. Silence wasn't silence anymore. It was judgment, tension, electricity. Ronaldo didn't flinch. He simply rested his wrist back on the armrest and replied softly, "Appearances matter less than the truth. And the truth is, this watch is worth more to me than any jewel-studded one you've ever seen. Not because of its price, but because of the life it witnessed." The boy whispered again, louder this time. "He's right, Dad." The father shushed him, but the businessman was already shifting in his seat, uncomfortable with how quickly the mood had turned. Phones were recording now. Eyes were watching. The polite conversation had become something else, a public test of dignity, and Cristiano Ronaldo had just drawn the first line. The cabin lights dimmed as the plane leveled out above the clouds. First class settled into its quiet rhythm. The clink of glasses, the whisper of conversations, the glow of screens. But the stillness around Ronaldo's seat was different. Heavy, expectant. Marissa returned. Posture straighter, voice sharpened with the authority of protocol. "Mr. Ronaldo," she began. Her smile stretched thin. "I've spoken to my colleagues. We have policies about maintaining first-class decorum. That watch," her eyes flickered to his wrist, then back to his face, "does not align with the standard we uphold in this cabin." The businessman finally closed his laptop with a decisive click. His voice cut through the air like a knife. "She's right. First class isn't the place for that." He gestured vaguely at the watch, his tone dripping with the entitlement of someone who believed he belonged here more than anyone else. Whispers rippled across the aisle. A few passengers nodded, others frowned. The young boy sat up suddenly, his small voice trembling but clear. "That's Cristiano Ronaldo. He can wear whatever he wants. That watch means something to him." Gasps. A laugh from somewhere in the back. The boy's father tugged at his sleeve, embarrassed, but it was too late. The truth was out. Marissa's composure cracked for just a heartbeat. She hadn't expected a child to pierce the tension, but she pressed forward. "This isn't about who he is. It's about fairness and standards." Ronaldo leaned forward slightly, eyes on the boy. His voice softened. "Thank you, kid." Then he turned back to Marissa, steady, unshaken. "You speak of standards. But what is a standard worth if it asks us to hide who we are The businessman scoffed, but before he could answer, the cockpit door opened. Captain Herrera stepped out, tall, mid-50s, presence calm but commanding. He approached slowly, the quiet authority of a man who'd handled storms both in the sky and among people. "Is there a problem here?" His voice wasn't raised, but it carried weight. Marissa straightened immediately. "Captain, this passenger refuses to comply with a request to maintain cabin standards. He's wearing an item that could diminish the atmosphere we promise our clients." The captain turned his gaze to Ronaldo. "Mr. Ronaldo, is that true?" Ronaldo didn't move, didn't flinch. He simply lifted his wrist, letting the scratched watch glint under the muted cabin lights. "This?" He paused, eyes steady. "This watch has been with me since I was a boy. It's the first thing I bought after my father gave me coins from his wages. Back then, I didn't have luxury. I didn't have shoes that fit. I didn't have food every night. But I had this. It was my promise to myself that one day I'd rise, that I'd fight until my family never had to struggle again." The cabin was silent, completely. Even the businessman shifted uncomfortably. Suddenly unsure, Ronaldo's voice deepened, carrying more than words, carrying memories. "This watch ticked beside me when I left home at 12, crying into my pillow because I missed my mother. It ticked when I was too hungry to sleep, too tired to keep running, but still ran. It ticked the night I scored my first goal for Sporting Lisbon, when I looked up into the stands and wished my father could see me." His eyes lowered to the watch, and for a moment it wasn't Ronaldo the superstar sitting there. It was Ronaldo the boy, fragile but unbreakable. "When I hold this watch, I don't see metal. I see my mother's tears when I told her she would never clean houses again. I see my father's face, worn and tired but proud. I see the boy who refused to give up, even when the world laughed at him." A flashback played in every listener's mind as if painted by his words. A skinny boy sprinting through the cobbled streets of Madeira, a tiny bedroom where the watch ticked on the nightstand, his mother stirring a pot of soup, half empty but full of hope. The elderly woman across the aisle dabbed her eyes with a tissue. The boy stared wide-eyed, whispering, "Wow." Even the businessman shifted again, his arrogance thinning under the weight of the story. The captain's eyes softened. He nodded slowly. "Thank you, Mr. Ronaldo." Then, turning to Marissa, his tone sharpened, professional, decisive. "This passenger has done nothing to disrupt this flight. His watch is not the problem. The problem is how we see it." Marissa froze. Her professional mask cracked, revealing a flicker of shame. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Around her, she felt the silent judgment of passengers who now understood what she had failed to see. Ronaldo leaned back, his voice calm but unshakable. "You see a watch. I see my life. I won't hide it." And for the first time, no one dared to disagree. The silence inside the cabin was almost holy. Only the steady hum of the engines filled the air. Captain Alvarez, steady, composed, broke it with words that cut sharper than any blade. "Mr. Ronaldo is within his rights. His watch stays exactly where it is. That is my final ruling." Every passenger felt it. A line had been drawn. The captain's authority was absolute, and in that moment, Ronaldo had won without ever raising his voice. The boy gasped with a grin, whispering, "See, Dad? I told you." His father gave a small smile, patting his shoulder. The businessman, the one who had scoffed, sat stiffly in his leather seat. His face flushed. He shifted, trying to hide behind his laptop screen, but it was too late. Everyone had heard him side with Marissa earlier. Everyone had seen his arrogance crumble. He reached for his champagne flute, but even that small act looked clumsy, like a man trying to swallow his pride in silence. Marissa stood frozen. Her body was upright, her uniform still crisp, but inside she was unraveling. Phones pointed subtly in her direction. Screens glowed with recording icons. She knew those clips would be online before the wheels even touched the ground. Her throat tightened. She had trained for years to embody grace, to control every gesture, every smile. And yet here she was, exposed, judged and undone not by Ronaldo's fame but by his truth. The captain gave her a pointed look before returning to the cockpit. "Carry on, Marissa," he said, his tone heavy with finality. It wasn't a command. It was a reminder, a warning. She nodded stiffly, her face pale. "Yes, Captain." But her thoughts were louder than any voice in the cabin. What have I done? I tried to reduce him to an accessory, when his watch carried more history than I'll ever understand. I judged him because he didn't fit my image of first class. And in doing so, I forgot what respect truly means. Her eyes flicked to Ronaldo, who sat calm and composed, his watch resting gently on his wrist, as if it had always belonged there. He wasn't smug. He wasn't gloating. He simply existed, unshaken, untouchable, and that made her shame burn even deeper. The elderly woman across the aisle gave Marissa a disapproving shake of her head, muttering softly, "Pride before the fall?" "Dear." A passenger in the back whispered, "This is going viral." Another laughed quietly, but not cruelly. The kind of laugh that said she really messed up. Marissa forced herself to continue serving drinks, her hands trembling slightly with each glass she poured. Her mask, the perfect, professional facade, and was cracked, and behind it, regret poured in like water through broken glass. She replayed the confrontation in her mind again and again, each time feeling the sting sharper. She hadn't seen him as a man. She had seen him as an image that didn't fit her rulebook. And now the whole cabin, maybe soon the whole world, had seen the truth of her mistake. Her regret wasn't loud. It didn't scream. It sat heavy in her chest, whispering the one truth she couldn't escape. The humiliation wasn't his. It was mine. The cabin had gone quiet again, but it wasn't the calm of luxury anymore. It was the quiet after a storm, when everyone waits to see what will remain standing. Marissa stood in the galley, clutching her tray like it was the only thing keeping her upright. Her chest was tight, her thoughts louder than the engines outside. She couldn't hide behind policies anymore, not after what the captain had said, not after what Ronaldo had revealed. Finally, with a shaky breath, she stepped forward. Each stride toward his seat felt heavier than the last. The passengers noticed. Phones tilted slightly, recording. The boy leaned forward in anticipation. The businessman lowered his gaze, almost as if he too was waiting for redemption. Marissa stopped beside Ronaldo's seat. Her voice trembled, not from nerves alone, but from honesty breaking through. "Mr. Ronaldo," she paused, swallowing hard, "I owe you an apology. I judged you unfairly. I thought your watch didn't belong here. But I was wrong. It's not just an accessory. I see that now." Her eyes glistened, the facade fully gone. "I let my pride and my idea of standards blind me. And in front of everyone, I tried to make you feel small, when in truth you've carried something far greater than I ever realized." The cabin was still. Every passenger watched. Even the hum of the engine seemed to fade. Ronaldo looked up at her, calm, composed. His voice came soft but powerful, carrying through every seat. "I don't hold this against you. We all make mistakes. What matters is if we learn from them." He lifted his wrist slightly, the scratched old watch catching the light once more. His eyes didn't just meet hers, they reached her. It's never just a watch. It's a reminder of where we came from, of who we are. And without that, all of this means nothing. The boy smiled, whispering to his father, "That's the coolest thing I've ever heard." The elderly woman nodded, tears in her eyes. Even the businessman exhaled slowly, his arrogance gone, replaced by quiet shame. Marissa lowered her gaze, humbled. "Thank you," she whispered. It wasn't protocol. It wasn't polished. It was real. Ronaldo leaned back, resting his arm again, his watch glinting softly in the dim cabin light. He didn't need applause. He didn't need validation. His truth had spoken for itself. The narrator's voice carried the closing words as the plane continued its steady course through the night skies. In a world obsessed with appearances, one man reminded us that value isn't found in diamonds or gold. It's found in the scars, the struggles, the memories that shape us. For Cristiano Ronaldo, a simple watch wasn't a symbol of wealth. It was a symbol of survival. And in the quiet of first class, everyone learned that dignity isn't worn. It's lived. The screen fades to black.